Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ICC's quarterly webinar, the last one of the year for 2024. We'll be getting started shortly, just waiting for the clock to hit 2:00, and we'll be going. Remember that you will be muted, but there is a question and answer function in the webinar program that will allow you to type in any questions that you have as we go along. So we'll be getting started in just a couple of seconds. I'm just waiting for everybody to be here, and hope you've all been having a good December, and that your holidays are fast approaching. Okay, so well, this is the final regulatory quarterly update for 2024. Amazing that time has flown by so quickly. And we're going to be taking a look at some of the various things that have happened over the past quarter. Keep in mind, of course, that this is presented by ICC, the Compliance Center. We are a company that deals with supplies and services for those who are involved in transport of hazmat or dangerous goods, depending on which side of the border you're on, or you're involved in hazard communication, such as WMIS or OSHA. ICC has a full line of things that you can use in your attempt to comply, such as labels, placards, packaging, copies of the regulations, computer programs that can help you comply. If we don't have it in stock, we can normally source it for you, or we also have our print-on-demand solutions, as well as our training and consulting. So if you do need anything in the line of compliance for transportation or hazard communication, please consider us. We are a privately owned company, and we have outlets in both Canada and the United States. My name is Barbara Foster. I am a regulatory expert here with ICC, and it's been a long, strange trip. I have been working here for about 35 years, specializing in the transportation of hazardous materials and also the hazard communication regulations. So been looking at 49 CFR, Canadian TDG regulations, ICAO, IATA, the IMDG Code, European regulations, and then also WMIS and OSHA. If you have questions, at the top of your screen, you should see a question and answer icon. And let's see whether I can circle it here. It is circled actually in the graphic here. It's just right here. If you click on that, you can text us a question. If it's something that my colleagues who are monitoring the presentation can answer, they will answer it for you. Otherwise, it will be left to the end. So just hang on, and we'll get to all the questions when we get to the end of the program. So we are not ignoring you. We will answer them as soon as we can. So our agenda for the day is we're going to look first of all at the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, what's been going on there. Then the Canadian version, Transport Canada and TDG updates. Then we'll look at some international updates, and this session we're going to be concentrating mostly on the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code, new version, which is coming in for January. And then we'll take a look at the American OSHA Hazard Communication Standard and anything from Health Canada. So first of all, the US DOT and the Pipelines and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. The biggest news, I would say, would be that they've published recently a notice of proposed rulemaking. Again, this means it is not a final version. It is out for review by stakeholders and consultation. So if you do have anything that you want to say about it, anything that you think you would like changed, or anything that you think is a really good idea and you'd prefer that DOT stick by it, they are accepting comments up to January 27th, 2024 by various modes such as regular mail, email, and so forth. If you want to take a look at the actual notice, it's in, you can check this link here. It is quite a long one, and we can't really talk about every single thing that's in there because there's a lot of not only big topics, but some minutiae, some minor changes that they've been making. But some of their major points that they're talking about are, first of all, the approval requirements for the design of railway tank cars and service equipment. Apparently they've been having some issues about the definition of a tank car facility. So they're going to amend that to make it easier to understand and more focused. And then apparently there's been a certain amount of concern about the way that tank car designs are currently approved through an agency called, or a group called the American Association of Railroads, or the AAR. So currently they have a tank car committee as an industry group, and they do approvals of new designs for tank cars, and there's been some issues about this. So PHMSA has decided that they're proposing to replace the tank car committee with a requirement for tank car designs to be approved by a tank car design certifying engineer, or DCE. This, if you read the actual notice, it turns into alphabet soup with all these acronyms, but you would have somebody who is approved and authorized as a design certifying engineer who would review the design. The engineer themselves would be registered and approved by PHMSA, so they would have to prove that they are capable of evaluating this. There's also engineers approved for certifying the designs for cargo tanks. And they go into a lot of detail about, well, just because you're approved for one doesn't mean you're approved for both, but theoretically, if you were really broad in your knowledge, you could get certified both for tank cars and for cargo tanks. So another proposal is that they will remove the requirement for tank car facilities who have a quality assurance program approved by the AAR and replace it with a requirement for the tank car facility to register with PHMSA. PHMSA would then ensure that they have a quality assistance program or assurance program and that they maintain it and certify that it meets the requirements in section 179.7 of 49 CFR for such assurance programs. They'll also add a registration program for tank car design certifying engineers and tank car facilities. Again, proposal currently not yet finalized. So the PHMSA and the Federal Railways Administration in this amendment, HM 265, are proposing that the tank car design certifying engineer must have an engineering degree, at least 1 year of work experience in tank car structural or mechanical design, or be registered currently as a professional engineer by an appropriate authority of a state of the United States, or they will also accept if they are registered in a province of Canada. No mention of whether that also covers territories, but just the text covers provinces. Another one that is kind of interesting in this is a review of the requirements for cargo tanks, basically tank trucks that contain multiple petroleum distillate fuels. You may have a tank truck that carries various petroleum distillates. one trip it could be carrying gasoline, next one it could be carrying fuel oil or diesel, then it could have just some sort of generic petroleum distillates. And the basic concept that had come up with for these is that way back, even before PHMSA, when there was the Research and Special Programs Administration, they came up with a rule that since you don't normally clean out the tank each time you empty it and then fill it with a new liquid, that you could have components in there that were more flammable than the current material that was being put in the tank. So the rule was that you could placard with the UN number for the material that had the lowest flash point. So if you'd started with gasoline and then you delivered your gasoline, came back with a residue, filled up with diesel, you could keep the placard on for gasoline, 1203, instead of switching to 1202, on the grounds that there might be enough gasoline residue in there to alter the flash point of the fuel oil. This has been debated apparently a lot by emergency responders, and they're proposing that this would only be allowed for shipments in one business day. So it wouldn't be that at one point there'd been gasoline in the tank and you remained with the UN number for gasoline forever. You would only be able to use this, say, if you went out in the morning with gasoline and in the afternoon with the diesel. Yeah, there has been a lot of debate over practicalities versus the desire to be as accurate as possible with the placarding. So this is certainly something that I think there will be a lot of debate over in how feasible it is to change the UN number versus how important the emergency responders think it is. DOT has been doing a lot of information collection activities. Again, this is apparently a start to try and find out where they want to go in future with future rulemaking. So they've got one out currently that appears to be basically to kind of get a snapshot of who's involved in hazmat and what their basic procedures are. This one, they're looking for response, if anyone wishes to, by January 6th, that should be 2025. Sorry, it's like a check. You keep on writing the password. Questions include to identify your hazmat operations and activities, things like, do you have a safety management system for your hazmat? Do you have standard operating procedures? Are you familiar with registration? Have you been registered, and do you know about how the registration system works and what's required? Are you a carrier, a shipper, a tester of packaging, or a manufacturer of packaging for hazmat? Details about types of packagings that you use, how it's purchased, and information about package testing procedures. So again, just sort of a snapshot of who are stakeholders and how hazmat is handled in individual companies. So, maybe they have to mandate safety management systems, or maybe they want to have more in the way of standard operating procedures. Then we've got lithium batteries, everybody's favorite. Lithium batteries, always a problem and always being updated. So they have a new guide that's come out here in the end of 2024. There's a link if you want to take a look at it. It's an interesting guide. You basically decide what type of battery you have. Is it lithium ion? Is it a lithium metal? Is it high powered, low powered, standalone, packed with, or contained in equipment, and that would send you to a guide that would step you through how to prepare that particular type of lithium battery. So a very flowchart sort of system for selecting how to prepare your lithium batteries, and would be reflective of the most current information as of now regarding lithium batteries. Now, of course, the UN is talking about in future coming up with a new system with a whole bunch of new UN numbers for lithium batteries. So we can't get too comfortable with the method that we have now, but I think this will be very, very useful for those of you in the United States who ship lithium batteries, and really even outside the United States, it gives a good step through of the decision-making tree. So, moving north to Canada, not that much going on in Canada. One thing is Transport Canada is working on changing the way packaging rules are going to be given for small means of containment for what I call the typical suspects, liquids and solids in class 3, 4, 5, 6.1, 8, and 9, excluding explosives, gases, infectious, and radioactives, which have their own separate standards for packaging. A customer from the United States call up recently, and she said, I've been looking through the Canadian regulations and I can't find the package authorizations like we have in all the other regulations, and that's because we don't have them. In Canada, they're simply in Part 5 of the regulations. It says, for these classes in small means of containment or non-bulk, if you're an American, they send you to an outside standard that currently is under the control of Transport Canada, TP 14850. And that includes two parts to it. Part 1 is how UN specification packagings get designed, tested, and approved. And Part 2 is how you select packaging for these classes. So fortunately, it is a free standard. You don't have to pay for it. But it used to be under the control of a group called the Canadian General Standards Board, or CGSB. That's where most Canadian packaging standards can be found now. Again, they took it from the CGSB, and now they're thinking of putting it back. I'm sorry, there is a typo there. That should be 43.150. The new standard is CGSB-43.150. They're currently working on it. The latest draft went out to members of the advisory group who were involved in this in September. Currently, it's being worked on to align with the 23rd edition of the UN recommendations, and it will basically incorporate TP 14850 plus another CGSB standard that currently exists, 43.126, which is for reconditioning, remanufacturing, and repair of drums for the transportation of dangerous goods. So again, TP 14850 is really getting out of date. It hasn't been updated. The version that is still referenced in TDG is the 2010 edition. So a lot of the packaging recommendations there are not current with the UN. So this would send it back to the CGSB, and then hopefully they would be able to keep it more current than the TP 14850 has been. Then we have the infamous amendment on competency-based training. This was put out towards the end of 2023 as a proposal, kind of like a notice of proposed rulemaking. In Canada, that's called publishing it in Canada Gazette 1. So the Canada Gazette 1 said that they would adopt a CGSB standard that had been created for this competency-based training. And they'd hope to get some feedback, make any minor changes that had to be made, and then move on to Canada Gazette 2, which would be the creation of the final rule. Well, things didn't work out quite so well. According to Transport Canada, there's been substantial industry feedback that indicates that the implementation costs have been significantly underestimated. In other words, a lot of people did not like it. They thought it was too expensive, too complicated. I know there was some concern that the way it had been written, it addressed ground transport, air transport. It sort of ignored marine transport, leaving them out in the cold. And there was a lot of negativity regarding it. So Transport Canada has withdrawn the CGSB standard for transportation of dangerous goods training, assessment, and competency. If you still have a copy, I mean, I think that there's some good things in there for anyone who wants to design a training program. There's some very nice checklists of, well, if someone does this job, here are the things the training should address. But they felt it's nowhere near ready to be made a mandatory standard. There was talk about, well, the revisions to the whole concept are being made. Maybe they could bring out another Canada Gazette one sometime in 2025. I'm not sure they're going to be that swift. Canada is likely to have an election next year, and elections tend to throw off regulatory development. If a new government gets in, there's always going to be a time where they've got to review what the departments are doing, see whether that's the route that they want to go. So I would say that it's very likely that it will take longer than they're currently estimating, but that's just a guess. And this one is both Canada and the United States. There's a note from the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance recently that said there's an annual unannounced hazmat/dangerous goods road safety inspection blitz, which occurs on US and Canadian highways. I'm not sure what the point is of not announcing them and then say, well, it's an annual thing. It sounds like it's going to be kind of predictable, but 45 jurisdictions across the United States and Canada participated in over 3,900 inspections on road vehicles transporting hazardous materials. 576 vehicles were found to have at least one violation. That's probably not a bad score, really. The most common violation that was found in hazmat was some issue with the shipping papers, which really goes back to the shipper, as they're the ones that are supposed to create the shipping papers. But of course, the carriers are also supposed to review the shipping papers and make sure that they're correct before they accept the shipment. The next most common violation was in loading and securement. So there were some concerns that hazmat loads were not being loaded safely. Certainly in Canada, there's not a lot of details in the regulations, but it must be loaded so that it should not leak or spill under normal conditions of transport. So that just gives you an idea where we are with how shipments are complying in real time. Then we go into the international standard. And now remember that this is the start of the new UN biennium. And I just realized that I haven't hit my face there. There we go. Okay, the start of the new UN biennium. ICAO and IATA, we've talked about that in the last session. So the new ICAO technical instructions will take effect January 1st, 2025, and that is a 2-year standard. It'll be good from 2025 to the end of 2026. But if you ship by air, you're normally going to be required to get the IATA dangerous goods regulations, and that is good for 1 year. In 2026, when ICAO is probably not going to be doing anything, they normally can come up with a number of minor changes and clarifications that it's really worthwhile buying a new book every year. And then for ocean, we have the International Maritime Dangerous Goods Code. It has a slightly different cycle. So the new edition, published at the end of 2024, it may be used starting January 1st, 2025. But there's an overlap. The old edition can be used throughout 2025, sort of giving you a 1-year transition from the old to the new. I think that this is primarily because ocean shipments can take a long time. They can take months. So it's not like they can say everything that's in the middle of the ocean on January 1st suddenly has to be in compliance with the new edition of the IMDG code. So this would give you time to make your changes, and hopefully your shipment would have arrived by the end of 2025 if it had been sent out under the old edition. However, the new edition must be used starting January 1st, 2026. So what's up with the IMDG new edition? It's complying with the new requirements that you'll find in the new UN biennium. One of the big ones is this addition of sodium-ion batteries. These are similar to lithium-ion batteries, but they are now going to have their own shipping descriptions with their own packing instructions. They'll use the same labels for both high and low powered. The Class 9 label with the graphic of the burning batteries, and then the low powered one with the red border and the graphic of the burning batteries. So they'll match up to lithium batteries. Why would we use these things? Sodium is a much more available element. It's not quite as good at holding energy as lithium, but it does have some advantages even over price. It can charge faster, and apparently can be typical sodium-ion battery has a lifespan 3 times longer than a lithium-ion battery. So those of you that are always finding your cell phone batteries dying too early and having to be replaced, or you have to get a whole new phone, this could be a big benefit. But primarily because sodium is so much more available than lithium, it would have a lower price point for manufacturing the batteries. They will also break sodium and lithium battery powered vehicles out into their own shipping descriptions. Now, right now, they are lumped in under battery powered vehicles in general. So they could be running on wet acid batteries, non-spillable acid batteries, various other types of batteries. But obviously, if they're a lithium battery or now a sodium battery, they have special firefighting requirements. They can't be dealt with like a normal combustible fire. So the idea was to give them their own shipping descriptions. So we've got 3 new UN numbers for these. 3556 for vehicles that are lithium-ion battery powered. That would be things like your typical Tesla or e-bike that runs on a rechargeable lithium-ion battery. If some manufacturers want to switch to sodium-ion batteries, that would be 35858, sodium-ion battery powered vehicles. And then there's an entry for lithium metal battery powered vehicles. Now, these are batteries that cannot be recharged. So when they're dead, you're going to have to put a whole new battery in. That's probably not going to be a very common type of battery, or a vehicle, but apparently it was common enough that the UN thought there should be an entry specifically to cover them, because lithium metal batteries do require some changes in firefighting compared to lithium or sodium ion batteries. So from this point on, they will have their own shipping descriptions. There's a new entry for fire suppressant dispersing devices. So these would be devices used for firefighting. They would presumably normally be installed, and when triggered, they would spray fire suppressing chemicals over a wide area. There's 2 UN numbers. It's a little bit like the safety devices or airbags, where they use an element that basically is an explosive. If it's a high enough explosive, the device has to be classified as 1.4S. But if it's a very small explosive charge or a non-pyrotechnic, then it goes as class 9. Gallium. Gallium is an interesting metal. It melts at temperatures very close to room temperature, and its properties are very similar to mercury. It just has a little bit of a higher melting point than mercury. Apparently, it is being shipped in manufactured articles. So they've created a new entry for gallium in manufactured articles that would be treated similar to mercury manufactured articles. There's a bunch of new special provisions. Some of the more significant ones are Special Provision 375. Now, this is one that actually sent me on kind of a wild goose chase. Somebody was asking about the exemption for environmentally hazardous substance, liquid or solid, NOS, in containers not over 5 liters or 5 kilograms. And up till the end of this year, it has been found in the classification section for marine pollutants. But starting in this new edition, they've moved that provision to Special Provision 375. So it's no longer in the classification system or section. It is a special provision for those 2 UN numbers, environmentally hazardous substance, either liquid or solid, NOS, UN 3077 or 3082. Since we've now got entries for sodium ion batteries, we have some special provisions for addressing them. 403 is an exemption for nitrocellulose membrane filters. Again, a technology that hadn't really been addressed in earlier versions of the regulations. Some new provisions for vehicles, 404 and 405. 407 is how to classify your fire suppressing dispersing devices, whether they would go as 1.4S or whether they would go as class 9. Then we've got 409 says that this provision allows you to use the shipping descriptions and all the information from the list of dangerous goods in the previous edition, the one that came out in 2022, that can be used until the end of December 31st, 2026. But just the list of dangerous goods. Carbon shipments, I'll talk about them in a following slide, but there's some requirements for carbon shipments. IBCs, there has apparently been a lot of work on whether it is safe enough to manufacture IBCs, intermediate bulk containers, which are normally between 1,000 and 3,000 liters. Can they safely be made from recycled plastics? And the UN has decided yes, that based on the current knowledge, that does appear to be safe enough. So the definitions have been adjusted to allow IBCs to be manufactured from plastic containing recycled materials, which is nice and green. Again, carbon and activated carbon, they've been modified by significant changes to their special provisions. Carbon shipments will now require the date of production and packaging, as well as the temperature of the material when packed, to be added to the shipping document. These carbon can become spontaneously combustible, so this information can help them manage the materials better. And there'll be new stowage and handling procedures. It'll be included in Class 4 in the section 7.6.2.7 in the handling section in Volume 1 of the IMDG Code. For 4 gases, argon, carbon dioxide, krypton, and nitrogen, these pretty inert, non-flammable, non-toxic gases, in the IMDG Code, they have a limited quantity provision, but it's very, very small. It's only 120 milliliters, which is good for little cartridges, but not much else. There's a new special provision 406 that says they could be shipped as limited quantities in containers up to 1,000 milliliters, 1 liter, if certain provisions are met. So a much more reasonable limit for shipping these gases, which are pretty low risk. And there's a new section 5.4.4.2 that requires that a certificate exempting a substance from the provisions of the IMDG Code and referred to in a special provision for that substance must be submitted together with the cargo information required by the Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS regulation, VI/2. So if you have to get a special certificate of exemption for certain cargo, then you need to be submitted together with the cargo information required by SOLAS. All right, and finishing up, we have hazard communication. Remember that in the previous updates, we've talked about how in OSHA, they finally updated the hazard communication system in OSHA to be compliant with the Globally Harmonized System Revision 7. This became effective in July. If you are a manufacturer of a pure chemical, your labels and safety data sheets must be in compliance with the new system, with new classification. Again, not an overall change, but modifications to the classification, SDS template, and labeling by January 19th, 2026. So over a year to go with that. And then if you are a manufacturer of mixtures and you're getting your information from the manufacturers of the pure chemicals, then you have until July 19th, 2027 to get your hazard communication in compliance with the new standard. Of course, when you have this major overhaul of the original hazard communication standard, typos work their way in. OSHA's noticed that they have some inadvertent errors and came out with a new rule addressing these. Most of these were minor errors in transcribing the tables dealing with classifications of health effects. For example, for one health effect, it might carcinogens, it might say the cutoff is 0.1% in the GHS. It accidentally got written as 0.01% in the hazard communication standard. So the new rule is just to make sure that the standard is, the typos have been worked out. Again, you can take a look at this in the Federal Register where the changes have been made. And for those of you dealing with hazard communication between Canada and the United States, Health Canada has issued a guide highlighting 16 of the major variances between the standard in Canada, in the hazardous products regulations, and the new U.S. hazard communication standard. They're both, again, in compliance with, or trying to comply with revision 7 of the GHS, but there are still some differences, and sometimes take a slightly different approach to how things are classified or what sort of warnings have to be provided. So if you're trying to design a label or a safety data sheet that would serve on both sides of the border, it is doable, but they do recommend that you take a look at this list to see where there might be differences, so that if you write a valid Canadian safety data sheet, it's not necessarily going to be acceptable in the United States or vice versa. So you can take a look at that, and it can give you some guidance on how these things, where there may be differences, where you have to sort of address both sides of the border to get your hazard communication into compliance. Of course, keep in mind that ICC is a good source of information on any of these things. If you've been to our website, I do recommend that you go. We do have a very long URL. Sorry about that, but we're thecompliancecenter.com, and we have lots of information. It's growing all the time. We have our blogs where we've got over 1,000 articles. Some of them talk about, again, new amendments, either proposed rules or final rules that are coming up to help you get prepared. Topics about sort of in-depth dive into certain exemptions for the dangerous goods regulations or 49 CFR. So if there's a certain provision that people are having trouble with, we get a lot of questions, we may create an article specifically on that. General health and safety topics. I like to do sometimes some historical dives into the history of health and safety development because it gives you I think, a better appreciation of what the pioneers of health and safety were trying to achieve and how we got where we are with the regulations. There's an old saying that safety regulations are written in blood. Normally when there's a regulation addressing safety, it's because there's been an accident. People may have been hurt or killed, and it's really, I think, eye-opening to see what the world was like before these regulations existed, and the very brave people who worked at trying to create them and make the life safer, both in the workplace and in the transportation system. We also have our newsletter. So if you want to sign up, the newsletters are free. All you have to do is sign up on our website, and they'll be delivered to your mailbox or your email box, I should say. And you'll get a notification of a lot of these changes that are occurring as time goes on. So please check out our website, go to our help center, read some of our articles, and sign up for our newsletters. So now's the time for questions. So I see that we've got some things listed here. I'm just going down. Some of these are just the links that Pam has put. Okay, so you've got one here. Jason from InfoTrack says, does Transport Canada allow the use of the new lithium battery mark without the telephone number as authorized by IATA, IMDG, and DOT? I spoke with TV, and I think you mean Transport Canada inspector 2 days ago, and he said no, since it was explicitly stated in the TDG. Lithium-ion batteries will continue to be reshipped multiple times in Canada. Okay, yeah, that is something that I really hope that they address sooner rather than later. So in the new UN recommendations, they have removed the requirement for the telephone number. It just never had I don't think they've ever really considered why we needed the telephone number on the lithium battery mark. And the IMDG code, the IATA DGR, the ICAO regulations, even 49 CFR has started to phase out that telephone number, giving a transition period where it's optional, and then eventually it is supposed to be entirely gone. Now, Transport Canada has not addressed this. So it is still in the regulations in Special Provision 34 that you'll need both the UN number or numbers of the batteries and the telephone number for more information on the mark. Now, there are a couple of loopholes, I think, that can be used. One is for imports. If you go to sections 9 and 10 for shipments by road and rail, they talk about shipments coming in the country, primarily from the United States, and they say, well, you can come into the country with labels according to 49 CFR or other safety marks. And if you want to reship without changing it, you can, but section 9.4 says then you have to put a note on the shipping paper that the markings are in accordance with the regulation it entered Canada under. I think that could be used to reship lithium batteries without putting the telephone number on, by putting this note on that it was allowed in under this concept of reciprocity, and identifying it was imported under 49 CFR, ICAO, IATA, or the IMDG code. Again, I think lithium batteries are such a big issue. I think Transport Canada is going to have to do something about it, but please let them know it's a problem. Just send them an email. The regulatory department in Transport Canada under the Dangerous Goods Directorate, and if they get pressured, they will deal with it sooner rather than later. I was talking once to one of the people in the department, and they said, if we don't know it's a problem, we can't fix it for you. So if they don't realize just how big of a headache this is, this may be on the back burner, but if more people start contacting them and letting them know it's an issue, hopefully they'll come up with some sort of workaround. Second question, can you provide a copy of the competency standard? Yeah, if you email me. Now, it is technically it's been withdrawn, but it is still, I think, in many ways a good guide to creating a system. So if you send me an email, I could send you a copy of the guide. For activated carbon, was this for bulk packaging or does it apply to small means of containment? Honestly, I can't tell you off the top of my head. Again, if you want to send me an email, we can discuss it further. But I can't tell you right off the top of my head whether that was bulk only or whether it was all activated carbon. I don't recall them mentioning bulk, but it might be an issue because of, obviously spontaneous combustible materials are more of a concern in large quantities than in very small ones. So send me an email and we can discuss it further. Pam, are there any other questions?
That's everything, Barb.
Okay, all right. Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Please remember, if you do have questions, if you're customers of ICC, please contact us. Again, we have our central phone numbers. We have our website with lots and lots of information on it. And if you want to email me, my email is barbara.foster@thecompliancecenter.com. Other than that, I would like to thank you very much for coming. Really like to see all these people attending. And if we can help you in future, please let us do. And have a good holiday and a happy new year. And we'll see you for the first quarter seminar next year. So have a good Good afternoon, and we will see you later. Thank you. Bye.